أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. My dear respected brothers, guests, let us begin. We begin by reminding everybody with the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we fear Allah in our public life as well as in our private life. We remind ourselves about the day when we will stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we will give account for everything we have done in this life. My dear brothers and sisters, the Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He encourages all of us to do good deeds, to engage in righteousness so that we will be raised amongst the righteous people. Allah tells us the reward of those who live a good life, the reward of those who worship Allah in accordance with His tawheed, those who follow the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What does Allah say? Allah says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِم مِّنَ النَّبِيِّينَ وَالصِّدِّيقِينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءِ وَالصَّالِحِينَ وَحَسُنَ أُولَٰئِكَ رَفِيقًا. That those people who do righteousness, who do good deeds, who worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then they will be raised on that day with those who Allah has blessed. And who are those that Allah has blessed? It is none other, first and foremost, an-nabiyyin, the prophets. Number two, as-siddiqeen, those who are honest and trustworthy. Number three, ash-shuhada, those who died as martyrs for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Was-salihin, those who did righteous good deeds. وَحَسُنَ أُولَٰئِكَ الرَّفِيقًا. And what a good companionship you will have when you will be raised amongst such good people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also tells us about the second destination, that the people who will be raised and will go to the other place. Allah tells us about those of Jannah. And then there is those who will enter into the hellfire. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about these people? He says, وَمَنْ يَعْصِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَإِنَّ لَهُ نَارَ جَهَنَّمَ خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا أَبَدًا. For those, وَمَنْ يَعْصِ اللَّهَ, those who disobey Allah, those who do evil deeds, then verily their final destination will be the nar of Jahannam. And then Allah says, خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا, and they will abide in the hellfire, خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا أَبَدًا, forever, and there will be no escape. Now we know, my respected guests, my respected brothers, that for both places, for Jannah and for Nar, you have people calling you to each place. You have people calling you to Jannah, and you have people calling you to Jahannam. This is the reality. And at the head of those who are calling you to Jahannam is none other than Iblis. The shaitan himself, he is the leader of this movement, the leader of this group. It is important for us to understand that once we acknowledge that he is the leader of these people who are calling you to Jahannam, the one who has a plot, who has a plan how to deceive the people, and how he's going to take so many people into Jahannam, it's important for us to understand who is Iblis, what are his plots, and how does he trick mankind. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells in the Quran, إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ لَكُمْ عَدُوًا فَاتَّخِذُوهُ عَدُوًا. That Allah says that verily shaitan is adu, meaning he is your enemy. فَاتَّخِذُوهُ, so take him as your enemy. So if you know that someone or something is your enemy, how would you deal with that? You have to understand, what is this enemy? What is its plans? Where does this enemy want to take me? In another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ هَذَا عَدُوٌ لَكَ, verily he is your open enemy. Now, my dear brothers, when we think about it, shaitan, he promises you the hellfire, he promises you the eternal destruction. Who is going to follow him? If you say, who is going to follow the call of shaitan, everybody will say, not me. I'm not going to commit shirk, I'm not going to commit kufr, I'm not going to follow his plans, I want to go to Jannah. Everybody will say that. But yet we know from the teachings of the Prophet that the vast majority of people will go to Jahannam. So how is that the case? If we say we are not going to follow him, we are not going to listen to him, but yet we still end up following him, how is that the case? Why? Because listen to this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he talks about Iblis in the Quran, he doesn't say don't follow Iblis, because that's very obvious. Nobody wants to or is going to follow Iblis. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? He says in the verse, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ كُلُوا مِمَّا فِي الْأَرْضِ حَلَالًا طَيِّبًا وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ إِنَّهُ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ مُبِينٌ. That Allah says, oh you who believe, eat of the good things, stay away from those things which are haram, and then what do you say? وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ. Don't follow the footsteps of shaitan. And this is where we need to think. He doesn't say don't follow shaitan. That's very obvious. Nobody wants to follow shaitan. But don't follow khutuwat shaitan. Don't follow the footsteps of shaitan, because shaitan lays for you a trick, lays for you a plan. And these little tricks, you will start with one of them, or somebody will start with one of them, and in due time you find yourself making some big mistake. This is what Allah says, Khutbah shaitan. In another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, لا تتبع خطوات الشيطان. Now, it's also interesting to note that in this particular ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, يا أيها الناس كلوا مما في الأرض حلالا طيبا. He says, eat that which is good for you, and don't follow the footsteps of the shaitan. What's the link between eating which is good for you and don't follow the footsteps of shaitan? We should always think about the ayat of the Quran. Why? Because one of the strongest ways in which shaitan is able to deceive you is through what? Your desire for food. Your desire for food. When somebody is hungry, when he is starving, you might think about following Khutbah shaitan. You might think about eating something which is haram, because your stomach sometimes determines whether you're going to follow the Khutbah shaitan. Furthermore, another verse in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us, الشَّيْطَانُ يَعِذُكُمُ الْفَقْرَ وَيَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالْفَحْشَاءِ. That shaitan, he promises you with poverty and faqr. And poverty is one of those things that the Salaf spoke about, that faqr is one of those things that will lead a person into committing kufr or shirk. Why? Because when he is poor and when he is hungry, for those of you who have seen poverty or have seen people in dire need, when they're in that situation, Allah knows what actions you will take. So Allah tells us that shaitan, he promises you with poverty, and then when you become afraid, you think you're going to become poor, you think you're not going to have money, you will resort to means which are haram. You will resort to start doing transactions which consist of riba. You will start thinking of trade where you might start thinking of selling alcohol. Where you must start thinking of doing things where you know you're not allowed, and you will start doing it. Why? Because ash-shaytan ya'idukum al-faqr. He promises you poverty. But shaytan, his plans and his promises are very weak. Furthermore, in another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us, in another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ وَمَنْ يَتَّبِعْ خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ فَإِنَّهُ يَأْمُرُ بِالْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنكَرِ. Once again, ash-shaytan, he promises you, he wants you to follow in his footsteps. What are the two things he mentions in this ayah? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, إِنَّهُ, verily shaytan, يَأْمُرُ, he orders you, he tempts you with what? With fahsha and al-munkar. Subhanallah. Look at in our societies. He tempts you with, first of all, al-fahsha, immorality, nudity. And this is very prevalent. Then he says, well, munkar. What does al-munkar mean? Shaitan, he tempts you to encourage other people to do bad things. So you don't just do the munkar yourself, but you also are encouraging other people to do bad things. These are the traps and the plans of shaitan. The Prophet ﷺ, he once spoke about the two main reasons to why a person will enter into Jahannam, and he said, al-fam wal-faraj. He said the two main causes that will lead a person into the hellfire is al-fam, the mouth, that which you say, that which you eat. It's a word or a sentence that we say which enters into Jannah, the Shahada. And it can be a word or a sentence that can enters into the hellfire. And at the same time, he said al-faraj, which is your private parts, your sexual desire. This is also another weakness of a man, where shaitan uses this and exploits a person, and he follows in the footsteps of shaitan. In another verse, a final verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا ادْخُلُوا فِي السِّلْمِ كَافَّةً وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ إِنَّهُ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ مُبِينٌ. What does Allah say? O you who believe, ادْخُلُوا فِي السِّلْمِ كَافَّةً. And this is the key. Enter into a sin. And sin is al-Islam, ad-Deen. Enter into ad-Deen كَافَّةً, completely. Complete submission to Quran. Complete submission to Sunnah. It's not up to you what you want to take. It's not up to you what you want to leave. It's not some days I will do this and other days I won't. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you want to be secure from the plots of shaitan, udkhulu fi silmi kafa, submit yourself completely to the way of Islam. And then you'll be safe from the protections of shaitan. Let me just summarize for you some of the steps in which shaitan uses to tempt us to commit sins or to bring us closer to his destination, which is the hellfire. The shaitan, he first and foremost, he tempts people with al-kufr and with al-shirk. And we can see this amongst the world. Majority of people, they are not Muslim. Okay, so he tempts people, he puts waswasa in their heads. about kufr and shirk, whether the existence of Allah, does he exist, does he not exist, atheism, all these other isms and schisms, people start to doubt the existence of Allah. And this is the plot of shaitan. The first thing he starts with is tempting people with al-kufr and with the shirk. If he's unsuccessful with that, then he moves to the second level, which is to enter amongst the Muslims and to spread amongst them bid'ah. And what is the opposite of al-bid'ah? It is a sunnah. So he will tempt you by not implementing the sunnah, but doing things that the Prophet ﷺ never did. Doing things that the companions never did. But you think it's a very pious act. But it's something which is detrimental to your iman. If shaitan is not able to convince you and doing acts of bid'ah, he'll move to the next level. And that is encouraging you or tempting you to commit major sins, my dear brothers and sisters. He will tempt you to commit major sins, those that have been mentioned inside the Quran and in the Sunnah. If he is still unable, then he moves to the next level. And he busies you or tries to tempt you in committing minor sins. You know, those things that you don't think are very important. You think Allah is not going to hold me accountable for these. And you say, oh, Ghafur Rahim. Those little sins. You know, he busies you with you committing minor sins. The Prophet ﷺ, when he spoke about the small sins that we do, the lying or the cheating or the backbiting or whatever these little sins may be, that the Prophet ﷺ gave the example of these minor sins. He said it's like these minor sins are small twigs. Small twigs. But if you bring a load of small twigs together and you try to set it alight, it's very easy to go alight. So don't think it's just a small twig. When you put these together, it can make a big fire. So be careful of the small sins that you commit. And if he's unable to make you fall into small sins, then what does he do? He will keep you busy with permissible acts. So not acts that you get ajr with, and not acts that you're going to get punished for, but just normal acts, everyday normal acts. He keeps you busy. Why? Because he doesn't want you to do good deeds. He doesn't want you to worship Allah. He doesn't want you to get hasanat. So he'll keep you busy with dunya and things where you're not getting hasanat and you're not going down. You're just busy. And then if he's unable to do that, his last trick that he'll have up his sleeve is to busy you with deeds that are not that rewarding. It is a good deed, but it is the lower of the good deed. He doesn't want you to go to the top. He wants you to do just the lowest, and he will keep you very, very busy. Now, subhanAllah, the i'jaz of Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He used the word khutwat al-shaytan. And when we think about every single word inside the Quran, there is a divine meaning for every single word. In this word, khutwat al-shaytan, footstep. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala use the word footstep? Because firstly, the most easiest thing to do is to take a small step. That's the easiest thing to do. And Allah is saying, be careful of this small step. Even this very, very small step. Don't think, I just made a small mistake today, I'm going to do a small thing today. No, Allah says, even one khutwah, that small step is very big. Don't take that small step. The second thing is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the word khutwah. Why? Because a footstep is followed by another footstep. You don't just take one step and stop. You'll take one and then you take another one. And what have you done? You moved from one place to another. And if you're following khutuwat al-shaytan, you're moving away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala slowly but surely. And finally, it is a khutwah. It is that small step that Allah warns us, because it starts with the fikr, or the idea. That sin, that bad thing that you want to do, it starts with the idea. Then you think about that idea, and then that idea starts to become a plan. And then that plan becomes an intention, and that intention then becomes an action, and then it materializes. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, don't even take that first khutbah, that first step, don't even let it enter into your minds. So my dear brothers and sisters, very careful that we are aware of the plots of shaitan. My dear brothers and sisters, the khutwat, like we mentioned, are very small steps, but the consequences of these, if we follow in these 4 small steps, we'll find ourselves very far away from the truth. If you take a line, you have a straight line, and you make a maneuver off the straight line, just very slowly, just a khutwah, you make one small change in angle, 5 degrees or 10 degrees, at the end of that line, you're very far away from that destination. It is that one small step, that small deviation, that small mistake you can make that can take you to a big disaster. And also, my brothers and sisters, this is those khutwat, these small things that if we don't pay attention, we don't take heed in what we're doing, they will become customary to us, we will become normal to these things. So if a person is lying, he makes 1 or 2 lies here and there, he knows, I'll get out of this problem if I just make one lie. Then he gets out of it because he made a lie. And then he's like, I got out last time, I'll do it again. So he does it again. And then he does it second time, he does it a third time. What happens is, he becomes used to it. He becomes used to it. The same thing as somebody, he delays his prayer. And you know, Allah does not like a person who delays. He delays it the first time. And then the second time is prayer time, and wait, he'll delay it again. Then the third time, he will delay again. What will happen? He will become used to delaying his prayer. It will become used to him. It will become a habit for him. So don't entertain even the very first khutbah. The Prophet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, he says, إنما يأمركم بالسوء والفحشاء وأن تقولوا على الله ما لا تعلمون. That shaitan, he promises you, يأمركم, he promises you with as-su, and su is evil. He wants you to do evil. That's his final result. He wants you to do evil. Number two, he wants you to do al-fahsha. There is no one more happier than shaitan when people are indulging in fahsha, when they're indulging in adultery or relationships outside of marriage or any other problems you can find. There is no one more happier than shaitan. And furthermore, Allah says, وَأَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. And he wants you to speak about Allah with things that you have no idea about. You don't know what you're talking about. And you will say things about Allah which are not true. So some people, to the extreme, they will say Allah has a son, and they will start worshipping his son. And this is from shaitan, this is not from Allah. Or even amongst the Muslims, maybe people will start to worship the prophets, or maybe start to worship the angels, or do something which is not from Allah. This is not what Allah has asked us to do. And تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ, that you say upon Allah that which you have no knowledge. These are things that are pleasing to shaitan. My dear brothers and sisters, it's very important that whenever we take any action, we're going to do something, that we think about it very carefully. We think about it in three phases. Number one, before we do the action. Number two, while we're doing the action. And number three, when we finish the action. Why? When we begin the action, we must be very careful that we're doing this action for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That whatever we're going to do, we're going to the masjid, we're going to pray, we're going to sit next to our brothers, we're going to fast. Whatever you do, before you make a niyyah, this is for Allah. So your sincerity is clean. Be careful, because at the beginning of the action, shaitan, he can come into your mind and make you do that not for Allah, but for some other reason. Secondly, while you're doing your action, doing that action, be very careful again. Shaitan is going to come again and trying to distract you. A very good example, you're praying. Okay, you're praying and you're in your salah and you're khushu with Allah. Then you know somebody has entered the room, shaitan comes. Oh, pray a bit longer. Stop crying. It looks like you're really into the prayer. Why? Because shaitan comes and you know somebody is looking. So you change your intention. You started with a good deed, but during the deed, you got distracted. Somebody came and you changed your niyyah because there is somebody there or something else. So be careful, even during the action, that your mind is focused with what you are doing and you're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And finally, at the end of each action, when you finish an action, always again be very careful that you are doing this action purely for the sake of Allah. When we finish the most virtuous, the most righteous act, which is the salah, we say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. What do we say straight away? Astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. Why? I just prayed. Why am I saying astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah? I just prayed. Because you may have some shortcomings. You may have got distracted. You may have thought about something you shouldn't be thinking about. So Allah, astaghfirullah, Allah forgive me for the mistakes or the shortcomings I did while I was praying. So even when you finish the action, don't get confident, don't get proud, I've done something good. No, say astaghfirullah. Make sure your action is still accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And another very good example of this is when a person gives charity. A person, he gives the charity and he leaves. He doesn't concern himself. Another person, he gives the charity, and then whenever a situation or discussion arises, he reminds everybody, oh, do you remember I gave 10 pounds? Or do you remember I built this wall in this masjid? He is destroying his sadaqah. The sadaqah is between him and Allah, that's his ikhlas. But when you finish the action and you talk about it or you remind, your niyyah, your intention, everything is changing. So the summary, that when we are talking about our action, we should always be careful at the beginning, in the middle and at the end. And now I want to conclude with a few steps that we can take, inshallah ta'ala, that will protect us from the khudwat shaitan that Allah told us about. Allah says, إِنَّهُ أَعَدُو, he is your enemy. So you should be very serious in understanding your enemy, the plots of your enemy. How is he going to trick me or deceive me? I want to go to Jannah. What are the steps I need to take so I make sure I go to Jannah and my enemy doesn't distract me? Number one, we have to seek knowledge. Brothers, it's very important, and I'm sure you've heard it many times. Not everybody is forced to become an alim. You don't have to become a mujtahid. You don't have to become the best reciter in the world. No, but the basic knowledge. How can we say we are Muslim? Wallahi, brothers, I want you to think about this now. How can you say you are Muslim and you don't even know the meaning of the Shahada? How can you say you are Muslim and you don't understand what you are saying when you are praying? You are talking with Allah. In your Fatiha, you are talking with Allah, and Allah is responding to your ayat. What you say, Allah responds. Do you know you are talking to Allah? Do you understand what does Muhammad Rasulullah mean? Do you know the struggles and the difficulties that Rasulullah went through so we can sit here and enjoy this deen? Where we pay no effort, we enjoy luxury. Do we know the life and the struggles he went through? This is our deen. So we have to start off with knowledge so that we understand who we are and we are proud of what we are. Number 2 is to focus on actions that will increase your iman. So do good deeds, but do those good deeds that you know are going to result in an increase in your iman. Fasting, extra prayers, sadaqah, going to the graves, go visit your graves. I'm sure everyone's got a deceased family member or father, children or someone, go visit them. Okay, this will remind you of Allah. So that's step number 2. Step number 3, my dear brothers, is fasting. Fasting is one of the best ways in which you can control yourself. You can control all of your desires. Ramadan is around the corner, so we will be forced to, whether we want to or don't want to, you will be fasting. It's one of the best ways to control yourself, your desire, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet told us that shaitan is like he is in your blood. He runs in your blood. Okay, so when you are fasting, you take control of, number 1 is your stomach, and number 2 is your private parts. Because when you are hungry, you can't do much. Okay, all you want is food. You can't think of anything else in most cases. Okay, so fasting is a very good way of controlling your desire, controlling yourself, and understanding who really your enemy is. The fourth point is the constant remembrance of Allah, dawam dhikrullah. Remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all times. Try to keep your tongue busy with the dhikr of Allah subhanallah, alhamdulillah, Allahu akbar, la ilaha illallah. You're walking down the road, say, you're sitting at home, say, you're working, you're doing the essay. As you're doing the essay, keep your tongue busy with the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And number 5 is seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's protection, al-isti'adha billah. So always saying, a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Okay, if you feel tempted, okay, you feel some difficulty, you say, a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Oh Allah, I seek your help, I seek your protection from the accursed shaitan. So don't be shy, or don't be embarrassed to say that when you are in a difficulty, or when something is wrong, a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Oh Allah, remove this whispering, this idea of what's going wrong in my head, remove it from me, a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. And the 6th point, عليك بالصحبة طيبة وإياك التفرد. The last point is number 1, عليك بالصحبة طيبة. And I want you to really listen to this carefully. Is عليك, it is incumbent upon you that you have good friends. And I can't overemphasize this, is to have good friends. Your friends reflect the Prophet said, if you want to know a man, just go check his friends and you will know who he is. If your friends remind you of Allah, when you sit with them, they say to you about Allah, they say, have you heard this ayah? Have you heard this hadith? They remind you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you know these are good friends. They remind you of Allah, they remind you of doing good things, and they protect you from doing evil deeds. And finally, وَإِيَّاكَ التَّفَرُّدْ, do not be alone. Verily the shaitan, he attacks the lone sheep. The wolf doesn't go for all the sheep, he goes for the one that's alone. So don't be by yourself, be with the jama'ah, come to the masjid, sit with the Muslims, celebrate with the Muslims, be part of the function, be part of the festivals, attend the duruus, attend the Quran circles, be with the Muslims, don't be by yourself. Because if you're by yourself, it's a matter of time that wolf will come and will attack that sheep. And I conclude, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, إِنَّ عِبَادِي لَيْسَ لَكَ عَلَيْهِمْ سُلْطَانٍ. And the last thing is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says that shaitan has no sultan, he has no power over Allah's slaves. He is weak, his promises are weak, everything about him is weak. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is strong, so we should be proud of our Islam, implement our tawheed, and be proud. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will aid us and protect us from the whispering of shaitan. Barakallahu feekum, jazakumullahu khair. Alhamdulillah, inshallah to Shaykh.
जज़ाकुमुल्लाह खैर। टाइम फॉर सुनना नाउ सफ़े ठीक कर दीजिए, अगले हिस्से मुकम्मल करें, कोई खला बाकी न रहे। प्लीज कोशिश करें कि अगले हिस्से जो है वो मुकम्मल हो जाए।
क्लोज